Until the lion have their historians, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. A lot of people don't understand that, but it is emphasizing the importance of telling your story to preserve your identity and to present what is your truth. Nelson Mandela says it is not our diversity which divides us. It is not our ethnicity or our religion or our culture that divides us. It is us.
Who were your fathers? Where are you coming from? What experiences have those people made that gave birth to you? You see, this will become very relevant now, even scientifically speaking, is that if your parents have suffered anything at all, whether it is good or bad, they can transfer that to you.
Sometimes our stories start out as very bitter and very overwhelming, but as we begin to tell our story, the enlightenment that comes from immersing ourselves in our own story, from understanding where the lessons that we are being taught from our story, by looking at what we now carry with us as values and gems and nuggets of resilience because of our story and that chapter of our life, we begin to understand that it fosters our identity, it paves our future, it cultivates our resilience, and it also adds to the body of knowledge and values that people need to overcome.
Hello and thank you for checking out this video. I'm Obehi Ewanfoh, the host of the African Diaspora Storytelling Series. Every 2 weeks we meet up on LinkedIn to talk about different ways we can leverage the power of storytelling as people of African descent. Now this is it. We are uniting the millions of Africans in the diaspora through the power of our story. It does sound like what you are interested in. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and share this video with your friends who might need it. Now, back to today's conversation. This is another day again, and this is another chance, another opportunity, like I was just alluding to, that every day that we are alive is an opportunity for us to share, to celebrate nature, to celebrate life, because life is actually celebration. Now, to understand what that might mean is to take a look at the flower. The way that flowers celebrate life is just by flowering. That is all it's about, Just look at where you are today and see that there is nothing else that you could be doing at this moment other than just celebrating life. And of course, celebrating also means doing it with all your mind, all your strength, knowing that this is perhaps the last thing you will do today. If you realize that, how are you going to approach this particular task that you are having right now? That is the message that sort of got at the point that it is important that we are intentional about the task, the effort that we are putting in place, because it is important for us. It is important for us. Of course, we can really extend that to different dimensions and to how deep we want to go with it, in that somehow, sometime, we also need to look at ourselves as messengers, as people who are on a mission. And mission, like Professor Oluwafemi, at the point we talked about Ifa theology. And when we were talking about it, he said something very important, that as people, of course, that are creative, people that are in businesses, or even ordinary people that are living their ordinary life, who manage to understand that they have a mission, because that is very important to identify, to understand that your life is not just a flickering of light, that there is a reason behind it, there is a mission behind it. And when you know that you have a mission, now the second part opens for you. What do you do with that mission? Who do you serve with that mission? Because your mission is not to serve yourself, it's to serve other people. And if we are careful enough how we analyze that, it makes a lot of sense to us. It makes a lot of sense to us that we are here to serve. You see, Muhammad Ali said that serving others is the rent we pay here on earth. And I think that is profound, but it is true. If we want to have good life, if we want to have life that maybe when we get to our 19, our 80, we can be proud of, then we need to serve other people. So for the first time now, anyway, I'm coming to the conversation of today just now. I'm creating a signature program for my work, which have to do with storytelling, and it's about helping people to find their deep meaning, their deeper meaning. Whether you are in business or you are a professional who want to have a deeper meaning in what you do, other than just competing with other people and running around because you just want to do the Me Too type of business so that people can also say you are present, you are there. How do you make sense of what you are doing? And I'm starting that program asking this simple question. Imagine this is 19 years old of you. You are looking back. Are you going to be proud of what you are doing today? If you cannot be proud of that, then this is the time for you to shape that kind of life, because nobody else is coming to do that for you. Really, you will be 90 years old. We hope that you will be 90 years old. At that time, you need to look back to your life, what you have done. Because many experts have said this, and I think it is true, that the worst thing that can happen to a man and a woman is to regret when you are old. Of course, you can regret when you are much younger. You have a lot of chances to be able to right the wrong and also be able to do a lot of experiments. But when you are old, you are 90 years old, you cannot do anything anymore. You are basically recounting the life that you have lived. You cannot jump or climb the mountain anymore. So if that is what is going to happen, now is the time for us to plan for that. So that when that day comes, or when that moment comes, because it will come, I'm talking of that moment when we are going to be transitioning, so that people can say to you, rest in peace. Rest in peace essentially means that you have finished your mission. You have done what you are supposed to do. That is what it means by rest in peace. But what if you haven't done anything? What if you have been living other people's life? What if you have been afraid to really tell your story, own who you are, to make a dent in this world and say, this is how I see it? You see, many people in history, they didn't really live very long, to maybe 120, 130 before they are able to do what they are doing, which is the reason why we are celebrating it. No, they do it when they still have the energy to be able to do it. So if we still have our energy, what do we do with that? Anyway, now that takes us to the conversation of today, which is self-preservation through storytelling. What do we mean by that? And again, we are looking at the people of African descent, people in the diaspora who are away from our home, who are having buckets and luggages of story, of experiences that we have gone through. I will just touch something, but I'm not going to go deep in that. You see, in Italy, for example, where I live, there are a lot of women that have been brutalized here, that have been abused. Of course, by their own people. I'm not talking of the European this time, who have been enslaved, who have been turned into objects. But this is what have happened. What do you do about that now? How do you use that experience that you have passed through to make yourself come out better in it? Do you even know your story? Are you bold enough to own your story? Can you use your story for your own good? Because if you don't, other people can use it. But you just have to pray very hard that they have your goodness in their heart, that they can use it to uplift you. So why would you give a person that kind of opportunity? We need to own our story. We need to use our story for our preservation, to be able to make our dent in the world, to be able to say, this is what we really want to do. It doesn't mean we are not going to go wrong. We can still go wrong. But I believe that it is better to do something and go wrong than succeeding in doing nothing. Yeah, I'm really serious about that.
Thank you, Brother Obehi. Greetings, everybody. Thank you for being here. My contribution will be brief, as I'm slightly under the weather, but I couldn't miss the appointment. So, Alafia, as my people will say. My name is Gloria Tinu Gumbadejo. I'm Nigerian from the Yoruba culture. I'm an ordained minister, an ancestral lineage healing practitioner and coach, a writer, and I work to support African women ministers who want to add spirituality to their ministry, and also work with Africans in the diaspora looking to bring more harmony, balance, and peace to their lives through looking at their own roots and drawing from their ancestors. So I just celebrated a birthday, and it dawned on me that I'm entering my elder years now, and I'm just appreciative of the wealth of stories I've accumulated. And this topic today brought that home to me. Self preservation through storytelling, ancestral lineage healing, and African spirituality are interconnected practices that play crucial roles for Africans in the diaspora, in my humble opinion. Storytelling, by virtue of its very nature, preserves culture and identity. Storytelling is powerful, it's a powerful tool for transmission and passing down of values, traditions, and history. It helps maintain a sense of identity and continuity with one's heritage. Through stories, native languages, and dialects, this can be preserved and revitalized, which are key components of cultural identity. Sharing stories fosters a sense of community and belonging, reinforcing connections among people in the diaspora. Storytelling provides a platform for expressing emotions, experiences, and struggles, which on their own can be extremely cathartic and healing. Many times I've come away from these um, audio casts that Obehi holds feeling witnessed, feeling seen, supported, encouraged, and really pumped up. I felt a sense of healing. In the same way I've received the healing, I have also felt part of offering to others in the room. When you are operating on a certain elevated frequency and energy with like minded people, it helps to raise that state even higher, benefiting all those drawn to it. I truly believe this. Stories of resilience and triumph can inspire and empower individuals, helping them to navigate their lives in the diaspora. Add to this ancestral lineage healing, connecting with roots, exploring and acknowledging the traumas faced by our ancestors can help in understanding personal and collective struggles. This all leads to deep healing. We cannot underestimate the depth of pain and trauma we as a people have undergone and continue to experience through the daily triggering we live through every day. Telling and speaking these stories helps us to work through this pain, to understand them in the context which we are living, and most importantly, enabling us to write new narratives and passing on more developed stories on to the next generation, and not the same old incomplete, inauthentic, distorted ones that have been circulating forever, which we have been part of promoting ourselves. Enough, brothers and sisters, enough. Documenting our own life experiences, challenges, triumphs supports creating and sharing personal narratives. Digital storytelling through what we are doing, like what we are doing here, vlogs, blogs, social media, helps to share personal stories and cultural experiences. These platforms, as we know, can reach a global audience and connect diasporic communities. Some of these are some of the gifts of the internet, despite all the other negative aspects. like oral history projects, are a key, crucial medium for preservation. Brother Obehi is king in this area, conducting interviews day in, day out of a wide variety of people, reminding us of those icons that a lot of times have just been forgotten, talking to elders and community members where possible to capture their stories, wisdom, experiences. These recordings can be archived and made accessible to future generations who we also need to encourage how to explore and feel proud of their heritage and lineage. Intergenerational dialogue storytelling is quite powerful when it works, which is dependent on how it's set up, fostering mutual respect between the two generations. And by engaging in these practices, Africans in the diaspora can effectively preserve their cultural heritage, foster a strong sense of identity and community, and ensure that our stories and traditions continue to thrive for generations to come. Thank you for listening, brothers and sisters.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. That is deep and that is really very important. It's very important. You see, from time to time, I really look at what I'm doing. And like I was saying before, I believe this is really a calling. I am really sure of that. In that, because of the people that it has allowed me to meet, to talk with, and communicate with, and learn from, most importantly, I know this is what I'm supposed to do. Okay, now there is a project that I've just written. I've sent it out to some friends to have a look because they will, of course, will propose it to the government. Let's hope that we are going to be successful in that. Let me just explain a bit of it. Of course, that is actually an extract of another project that we intend to execute in Nigeria later in the future, which is an ultra-modern infrastructure that is going to be built dedicated to storytelling, the research and the use of storytelling, looking at it from the point of view of neuroscience, the different deep way of understanding story, oral narration. In this infrastructure that we are talking of, we will have different international conference center, everything linked to storytelling. We want to really look at storytelling not only from a philosophical point of view, but to build this institution so that it can be used as a way to teach people how to leverage this awesome power. Now, why am I saying this is an awesome power? It is an awesome power because without the storytelling or the secrets of the storytelling, the pyramid will not be built thousands of years ago. The future that we are going to build is going to be built on story. The First and Second World Wars were caused and resolved by story. Even our life and death are all linked to story. Let me give you an instance so that I want us to understand that we are really tickling with something that is powerful here. It's at the rudimentary of how our brain even functions. You see, tell a gorilla, for example, I don't know how the gorilla functions, but at least we can make a kind of a deduce some information looking at them, looking at other animals, that the gorilla should maybe give you a banana and you will tell the gorilla that, okay, maybe after 2 or 3 years, I will come to you and give you 5 or 6 bananas. It's going to be pretty difficult for them, at least in the way that we think that they reason. But we are able to put somebody into something that might be dangerous. We will tell the person, hey, don't worry, we will save you. For example, the president of the United States, President J.F. Kennedy, told the American people, I'm talking of the Mission to Moon speech, that by the end of this century, we will send a man to the moon and he will return. By this time, nobody have gone to the moon in the United States. But this time, America want to land somebody in the moon. Now, we are talking of the story that we are telling, how that story conditions also what we are doing. So that somebody is going to put himself into that tube that is going to travel into space, landing in the moon. The person believes that the other people that are here are going to take care of him or her. Storytelling helps us to do anything. So I think it is important that we pay attention to it, that we are not just here wasting time. We are taking into the fundamentals of the human being and the human consciousness. It has to do also with what happened after we have died. Where are we going? All these are explained within story. So what we are doing in the small project, I just want to say it again, is a festival of storytelling here in Verona, where we, of course, because we are living in Verona and the economy of Verona and Italy is linked to tourism, so we are linking into tourism so that in these 3 days, we bring in different experts. Let's talk about storytelling. Let's see what can we learn from it. How can we use it also for ourselves to build who we are? And if we succeed, then of course we can take that project to the mother project that is going to be taking place in Africa. This again that I'm talking to you is story. It hasn't happened. But I have the idea. We have it written down. It is when we believe it, like in the credit system, that you go to the bank and tell them, give me $20. I will pay you in 10 years. I will pay $25 or $50 or $100. They believe you. Like the person who is going into the tube, that is going into the space, he or she believes in the story. So story is fundamentally a miracle. All right. Having said that, I want to thank all of you again for joining us. And I want to pass the mic to Dr. Marcia. Dr. Marcia, thank you so much for being here always. Please, what is your take on the conversation?
I'm thankful for being here, and I hope you get better, Gloria. I know you have been ill a little, and I did say you were to enjoy your birthday no matter what. Sorry about that. I am a Christian leadership life coach and consultant. I really help women to preserve themselves through using their stories. And their stories are usually from their vulnerable place to their valuable place. And so they use these vulnerabilities as strength to create their brilliant new beginning, which I call pivoting with power, that involves unmasking your pain, reconnecting with your true self. I take their stories, their disappointments, their failures, I guide them through, because sometimes our stories and our experiences make us feel stuck and very confused about the next step. And so I believe in storytelling as a self preservation tool. I also help by writing children's stories and turning them into textbooks so persons can look at, visualize themselves as they are, and problem solve and critically think about how they change their outcome and change their life. I recently wrote my book on leadership. It's on Amazon. It's doing well. A Leader Like You, where I get Christian leaders to harness their superpower. And there is one coming out, which is a collaboration with Annie and some of our other friends, Dr. Eva Brown, on the lessons learned from COVID. And so these are stories, these are important things, but they are life. They put us in the position where we ought to be. They make us see, reframe, reflect, reconnect, rebalance, recharge. Those are the highest parts of self reservation through storytelling. And when we say storytelling, we mean our own stories. Everybody's story. I made a post yesterday that says everybody's story is a part of a bigger narrative. And you are giving your story, your special story, your unique story, because you have been given when you're born your unique assignment and your unique mission and your unique purpose that fits into the crossword puzzle of what we call life. Ultimately, we will have to give an answer on how well we told our stories so that it could impact others and change outcomes and make the world a better place. The African diaspora has a rich tradition of storytelling, and they have used it incredibly well over the last 30 years to as a means of self-preservation. So if we go back to the dates of we want to, because these are stories that we cannot change, Obi. They occurred, and that's the thing about stories. Stories are experience. They happen to you. And when persons tell your story for you, this meaning and interpretation and the impact and influence of your story diminishes. And we must never allow persons to tell our story if we want to preserve what is valuable and what is meaningful in our own stories. And so when we go back to slavery, when we look at the songs and the oral histories, these were very crucial to remember for maintaining cultural identity. Sometimes when you tell your story and the emotions flood you, the enlightenment, because sometimes our stories start out as very bitter and very overwhelming. But as we begin to tell our story, the enlightenment that comes from immersing ourselves in our own story, from understanding where the lessons that we are being taught from our story, by looking at what we now carry with us as values and gems and nuggets of resilience because of our story and that chapter of our life, we begin to understand that it fosters our identity, it paves our future, it cultivates our resilience, and it also adds to the body of knowledge and values that people need to overcome. And so our stories as a self-preservation not only preserves us, but preserves and protect our children, preserve and protect our environment, preserves and protect our community, and paves a path for future persons understand through your self-preservation, through your story, that it is possible for me. I can do it too. And so these the ways in which we tell our story is very important. We must be very authentic. We must be very honest. We must be very open in our story. And we keep saying that if you're going to preserve yourself, then it cannot be that you tell all parts of your story to all and sundry. So it loses its meaning in full connection, it loses its value, and it loses its purpose. We must choose the parts of our stories that will make the change that is desired and very relevant in the moment. We must reframe our stories so we look at the good parts of our stories through telling the bad parts, because the bad parts are really the lessons, they are really the programs, they are really the victories, they are really the overcoming. The bad parts, the parts that make us uncomfortable, the parts that make we remember who we are, the parts that make us now show up unapologetically, confidently, and with enough clarity to understand our purpose and our direction. The part that makes us know that no matter what you say or do will not change me. I have come through greater, and no weapon that is put in front of me now can prosper. I know who I am. And that is the thing about story and self preservation. It is inside of you, it permeates your space, and it gives you your power. When you understand your story, you take back your power, you own your outcome, and you change your circumstance. That is not anybody's right, it is your right, because it is your story. It was given to you, you lived it, and you learned from it, and you must now proclaim it in such a way that other people are led to understand what their story means and how it becomes the composite whole of the parts that they are carrying, so that they can carry it well and proudly and with honor, and they can share it with maturity and grace and dignity. And that in itself can preserve the hurts and the disparities that comes up in other people's story that create bias and prejudices. When you love and know and accept yourself, it is when you understand what your story means and what it is to be used to do, because that is the ultimate end of the life of someone who wants to leave a legacy, your story, what you did with your story, and why you are still standing and telling that story even when you have passed. That is my first take on this topic. Very, very personal for me.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Matia. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I appreciate that. That is powerful. That is actually going to the depth of the conversation. So I was interviewing this assistant professor in from US. His name is Tawanda, and I never forget what he said because we're looking at identity, the question of identity. I've written a book about identity. I call it Identity Crisis. In fact, everything that I've said in that book, I'm still convinced by it today that is really an identity crisis. But in any case, he said something very important, that at least from the African perspective, what we know as human being or the identity of that individual is not just the entity itself who is just walking around. Instead, that individual must be linked to what have happened before. Therefore, talking about his or her ancestors. Who were your fathers? Where are you coming from? What experiences have those people made that gave birth to you? You see, this will become very relevant now, even scientifically speaking, in that is what the scientists call epigenetics. Is that if your parents have suffered anything at all, whether it is good or bad, they can transfer that to you. You see, we are literally product of our parent. I don't need to remind us that one day a man and a woman had a fusion. That sparkle, that light, that sparkle is what we are. Therefore, we are a result of a process. We cannot just eliminate that process and still be who we are. It is impossible. Therefore, we have inherited everything that have happened under the sun since the beginning of time. There have never been any cut. So that when they talk of the subconscious, those things that you do not have access to just now because you are not thinking of that, because nobody is telling you that there is an elephant in the room. But if somebody reminds you that it's an elephant in the room, then you have a way of going back several thousands of years to understand what is an elephant. So we are a product of the past. But we also, what we know as human beings is also defined by what is going to happen in the future. Therefore, the legacy. Now, that might appear even very simple, but what are the consequences of that? Let me just expand on that a little bit, then I'll pass the mic on. Now, that is profound because the conversation we're talking about was actually looking at the Euro-Western and African relationship, the encounter we have had, and the consequences of that encounter, which of course many of us are suffering from today. And many of us are lost, so we don't know where to start from. But maybe where we can start from is to even find out who we are. We're not going to find out who we are through the lenses of other people. Again, we are talking of story. So that if you understand that basic principle of life or personhood, as Professor Tawanda will put it, you will be careful what you say, what you do, and how you present yourself in the world. Because your life is not your life alone. It's the life of several generations that is going to come after you. You dare not waste it. You dare not misrepresent it because it's not about you. I was saying something before that in Ifa theology, we will be taught about the idea that when you have a mission, it is not to serve yourself. Because you are not the centerpiece of it all. You are just part of it. If we understand this basic thing, when we take a look at what is the picture today, for example, let me use a life example so that it can be easy for us to understand. When General Sani Abacha died, which was the president of Nigeria, the military head of state of Nigeria, most of his account, he has different account. I think the one he was having, I don't know whether in France or in Switzerland, there were trillions of naira inside his account. Then there was a professor in Nigeria, a professor of mathematics, who said that that was the first time he was hearing the word trillion in reference to money. Now, let's break that down shortly. If General Sani Abacha knew that the money that he is stealing from the Nigerian treasury is supposed to take care of the Nigerian people, and the Nigerian people that we are talking about are him, therefore taking care of his future, he will be careful what he do. But if we take life from the shallow-mindedness that we have inherited here in the West, that life is just about you, me, and myself, you can sell out your entire village. You will tell them, give me the money, I will give it to you, because you don't know who you are. If you know who you are, you know that you are selling yourself. You are not selling any other person. In another way, when we look at maybe spirituality, looking at it from in another part of Africa, we can see that God is not going to punish you. Your evil punishes you. Your action, what you do, live around you to make sure that you are not going to go unpunished. It can take several generations to come, but you will never go unpunished because you are part of the circle that is going to live forever. So again, these are deep conversations. But of course, we are talking about preservation. Why will it not be deep? So thank you for the sharing. Now, I want to move to Jenny. Please go ahead and share with us. The conversation is self-preservation through storytelling. Please go.
Hello, Obi and Gloria and Dr. Marcia. I am enjoying this conversation of the history lesson, everything. It's all inspiring. I was coming on to speak about how I tie in stories with my skincare business. But you guys went so deep on me, it had me kind of discombobulated, but I enjoyed everything you were saying and expressing. And especially Dr. Marcia, when you were talking about the uniqueness of each individual, how we all have a story to tell, and it's all beneficial for everyone who may be in dire straits. There's not a human being on this planet that hasn't experienced a painful event in their lives. And sometimes we bury that pain so deep that we cannot relate to it. Or, as Obi says, you must know yourself. And when we deny our pain, we deny who we truly are. So to discover that pain, which I had to do. I had to discover that pain when I took a leadership course under Dr. Stephen Matthews. He had me pulling things out of my unconsciousness that I had failed to dive deep into and truly discover my resilience, discover my intelligence, and discover the strength that I had and the talents that I have to serve other people despite, the pain. Actually, the pain was going to be the catapult to help me help other people in sharing my story. If I'd shared my story completely, I would have an encyclopedia volumes. So I won't go that far back. But I will start where in 2019, my life was disrupted after a 17-year marriage. It abruptly ended. I found myself relocating to North Carolina to live with my daughter and my grandson with the hopes that with the retirement funds that I had, I would be able to buy a home. Um, COVID hit, right? So COVID hit. So that turned everything upside down. So I was no longer able to buy a home. Um, then I was thinking, okay, well, if I can't buy a home, then let me, look to see if I can rent an apartment. With my retirement funds that I had and the way the economy and the rent and the mortgages were going crazy, it totally took me out of the market to even try to rent an apartment because I was seeing how the landlords were just taking advantage of the renters. And I said, I would hate to invest myself in moving into an apartment and then a year later the landlord would raise the rent so high that I would have to relocate again. And if I kept doing that, my retirement income would diminish quickly. So I had to discover a way to supplement my income. And so I went to California to visit my son. And in that visit, we discussed, he said, Mom, what are you going to do? I said, you know what? I really don't know. I said, but I know I have to do something to earn income so I don't tap into my retirement and deplete it. So we talked back and forth and everything. So I thought about writing a book. And so I did. I started writing a book, but it was a fiction. It was a fiction book. And I think it's good. But, then I started reading about writers and authors who write books, and the income is you invest a lot of income, and it's probably a long time before you start receiving any revenues back from your book. So I said, well, that's not going to work. I need income right away, right? So I let it marinate, marinate. So by the time I got home, I started thinking about what is it that I'm going to do. I said, but whatever I'm going to do, it has to be something that I'm passionate about. It's going to have to be something that I love doing. It's going to have to be something that serves other people. It has to be a benefit to my community and to the people who it was going to serve. When I was working back in 2000, well, I retired in 2009 and we started another skincare business in 2006. And I really loved that business. Um, but as I had started getting older and stuff, it became quite not monotonous. It just became too busy where I had to always to do shows. I had to remove the things from my home store and take it into the venue and then set up and take it down and go back home and set it up, and all of that got too busy for me. So I eventually left that and just was living off my retirement and my Social Security. So I said, but you know what? I really liked that business. I really loved it. I saw how it helped people's skin. I saw how I had a technique through my formulations and stuff that really helped people with blemishes and old age and made their skin really glow. And I said, I like that, and I also I'm an esthetician by trade. So I said, you know what? I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do that. So I started it, but it didn't take hold. But I kept doing the products, right? And I got a coach, and she advised me. She says, it's not the product that the people want. It's they want to know you. They don't the product, it'll sell itself, but the people want to know you. They want to know your story. They want to know what's your background. They want to know your likes, your dislikes, your experiences. So I started writing articles, and that's how I tie my skincare business in with um, my articles that I write, because they all complement one another. For instance, I have one that says your face has a story to tell. Well, when you're young, you have a beautiful, vibrant, full face, right? Full of collagen and everything. Your face is glowing and it's just the picture of health. But if you're in an abusive relationship and you're getting beat down and you're getting mentally diminished, your face takes that full effect, right? So as you start getting older, where you may not have seen those dents and bites and scratches on your face, then you will start seeing them now. And so I tie my story in with moisturizers and things, telling my true story, my authentic, unique story about being in an abusive relationship and skincare, and how the skincare and formulations and things that I make help diminish that, make it not look so prevalent, right, in your appearance, and it just gives a self. Then take it into how it builds your confidence, where you can look deeper into who you are, past the surface, and delve into it like that. And then I also tell stories of when I was taking my esthetician tests, and I went to the board, and you have to make up these kits. So you make up your kit that you're going to work from, and then you're going to have a kit, another kit, in case you need more supplies. Well, I had to work from the kit that had more supplies, because when I entered into the room, for whatever reason, the bottom of my bag, with all my sanitary supplies in it, that it once it's unsanitized, you cannot use it any longer. It's split open. It's split open, and a lot of my gauze, my spatulas, my tiles fell on the floor. And there's no way in the world I can pick those up, put them back into the kit, and use those. So I had to walk them over into the trash can and place them. And I saw the instructor, the testers, looking at me with an eagle eye. They were just looking. I said, "Yeah, uh-huh." And so I said, "I don't know how I'm going to do this." I was so full of nerves. I just knew I was going to fail. I was so focused on failing and so nervous that I asked the other instructor, I said, "Please, can I just come back and take this test over?" He looked at me, he shook his head, he said, "Keep going." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to keep going." So I kept going, I kept going, I kept going. I did all the procedures and stuff. And so when he came back again, I said, "I don't have everything that I," he said, "Keep going." And he turned around and he walked away. I'm feeling so, I'm just, in my mind, I have failed. I failed, and I said, "Okay, I'm just going to go through the process," and but I know I failed. So I'm just full of nerves. I'm on the verge of tears. And so after the exam was over, he comes back in. He says, "We have your test results." He says, "Don't open your test results until after you leave the building." And I said, "Ain't nothing but a thing for me," because I said, if I open up this test now, I'm going to be crying because I know I failed, right? So I go to my car, and then I'm just so nervous, but with my hand shaking, I open up the envelope, and right across the top it said passed. You don't know how I cried. How I cried, holding on to that steering wheel and thanking God, "Thank you for helping me pass this test," because I just knew that I had failed. So, in telling that story, I'm hoping to help other candidates who are going into the board to take their test, that anything that ever comes up to them, that's a barrier, or if they start feeling defeated, just keep going. I just remember the man, he said, "Keep going, keep going." And so my stories are to help women of our age who are 50 plus, and I say 50 plus and beautiful, uh, to keep going, keep your confidence building, keep taking self analysis of yourself. At every birthday, take an analysis of yourself, of where you are. Delve deep into your psyche and find out who you are, and do the best that you can do, and lend yourself to as many as you can. And with that, I'm going to land my plane. Thank you.
That is really powerful. Thank you so much for that. You see, it's like you are speaking to the second room because we have two rooms here. Every week we talk about one week we talk about storytelling for business. The second week we talk about storytelling for the African diaspora. Of course, today we are talking about the African diaspora, how we can use storytelling to build up ourselves. And of course, we're talking about self-preservation through storytelling. Just before I move there, it is important that we understand that story help us to take away the fluff and help us to connect to the people. That is what storytelling does for us, because people literally want to connect with other people. And there is no instrument since the beginning of time that have been more effective than storytelling. Story can make you cry, even though you know that it is not real. Let me explain what I mean. I do translation for African diaspora. Okay, let me call them African immigrant here who are seeking asylum. So one day I went to the tribunal to translate for a little girl who was seeking asylum, who was maybe wondering that maybe her story was not going to be accepted. If your story is not accepted, then you could face deportation or things like that. I knew that the story she was going to tell was not true. She knew that too. But the way the girl told the story in the tribunal, which of course I was translating because, okay, I just have to translate what she's saying. I really felt that some tears were rolling down in my eyes. And the same happened to the judge too. The judge that was listening to her. Strangely, a few weeks later, the girl called me that she had been given 5 years. And what I'm really saying here is that it's not story, it's not even about whether it is true or false. It's how are you able to connect the emotion? Okay, let me take it away from the from the story of refugee and let's look at something that you already probably know. The cinema. Have you ever gone to the cinema knowing fully well that what you're going to see is a lie? A lie meaning it didn't happen like that. But you go to the cinema, you are watching the movie, at a point you are shifting your eyes on the seat. What is happening to you? What is happening to you is that the teller of that story is penetrating into your mind and is messing you up. That is how it functions. That is why psychologists employ storytelling. That is why people that are very powerful in the field of leadership use storytelling. That is why those business executives who want to be able to stand up use storytelling, because story will remain. It penetrates the wall. All of us set up wall. Anyway, that is by the way, because we're not in business storytelling today. We are talking about using storytelling for self-preservation. But of course, it is a story, only that this time we are looking at how do we use it to uplift our image. You see, before, I think with Dr. Marcia talking about the fact that we should never allow other people to tell that story for us. And I don't want you to underestimate that. Have you ever tell story of other people? You don't put your flesh in that story because you haven't lived that experience. You don't see what have happened. But when you tell your story, it's a different ballgame altogether. You could even make some parable inside because you can flip the data. You see, Dr. Martin is telling you that it's not every part of your story you need to tell. You need to look at the circumstances. Who is in front of you? Who are you telling the story to? That is number one. What do you want to change with the story that you are telling? All these are going to help you to configure the elements. The elements are the event, what have happened. You are going to rearrange it in a way that you are going to effect a change in the person that is listening to you. This is from the vantage point, I think maybe I'm wrong, that oral narration can beat the written narration. Because in oral narration, you can rearrange the element according to how it fits. But in the written narration, you need to stick to it. Otherwise, what are you talking about? Because I read it, you read it. Read it, you just simply have to read. In oral narration, you don't simply read. Instead, you read the environment, but you interpret what is happening with your story. It's a complete ball game altogether. If we succeed, I hope we will, with our storytelling research in Nigeria, we will explore this element deeper because it is really deep. Now, the point is that it is fundamentally important that we use our story to preserve our culture. And I want to go back again to what Dr. Martial is saying, that this is not about you. It's about a generation of people that are going to come after you. Now, let me share a small story. I don't remember the year exactly, but I watched the news. Dr. Chinua Achebe was being interviewed on CNN. Of course, by that time, he was the biggest living memory in Africa in terms of literature. I don't know where it have happened, but he had been awarded the father of African literature. And Chinua Achebe now are talking with this young journalist who is introducing him as the father of African literature. Then Chinua Achebe said, well, I cannot be the father of African literature. African literature is for the whole of African people. I'm not the father. Okay, this is the point. In that we are all simply playing a part in this. We did not invent it. In the 5-part book series, I make mention of the fact that for the fact that you even know what is food, it means somebody have make a lot of sacrifices for that. You do not live enough to be able to experiment, to know what is even the basis of the danger that we are afraid of. Instead, what you do is approximation. That based on what you know, but how do you even come to the knowing? The knowing is already baked in you because you are a part of a process, deeper, longer, long-lasting than you. You are tapping into that. That is how you know what is fear. That is how you know what you can eat. That is how you know that this particular fruit, you can't eat it like this. Because there are some fruit, if you eat it like that, you could die almost instantly. Because food are also poison. But if you know how to eat the food, you will be well. Because it's natural elements. And you are natural elements, so you need to fit in the food that you eat. So our ancestors have experimented. Many of them died because they haven't seen it before. If you go to the forest, you will understand what I'm talking about. That in my place, that is a particular, or let me call it a fruit, but that would be very sad. It's called otwe. Otwe is a fruit that when it's dry, if a drop of it were to land on your skin, you will almost run naked. The intolerance it will create on you, it will be so resistant that you will literally run. In my language, it's called otwe. But how did we know? Because somebody have tested it before. Therefore, if you are from that part of the world, you don't play with those type of fruits. You see, mushroom, just in the family of mushroom, there are some mushroom you will eat, you will literally die. But there are many of them you will eat, nothing will happen to you. How do you know? Based on the story. Somebody have tested it before. So our story, our preservation, like Dr. Martial is saying there, is not just about us as individual, but about us as group, as a larger extended family, about all of us. If we understand it like that, then we will be intentional in documenting our story because people are going to benefit from that. Okay, I want to repeat that again. The story that you are telling, that you are maybe probably calling your own, somebody who is not yet born is going to benefit from that story. Does that make any sense? Okay, what about book like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill? You see, when Napoleon Hill was writing that book, he didn't have any consciousness of me that I would be here. But I've read that book. I've gained a lot of value in that book. I've read that book for more than 5 times. I am not exaggerating. And I will read it again. I am benefiting from that. So if you can take the time to please put down your experiences, particularly for those of us that are in the African diaspora, this is the reason. If you don't put down your experiences, the people that are going to pass through the track where you are right now, they will probably be able to figure it out anyway, but it will be harder for them because they don't know how to figure it that part that where you are right now. But if you show them how you figure it out, when they come, they will move faster because they will just apply your strategy and they will move on. You see, that is why I think that the world that we are living in today is becoming more interesting in an aspect, for example. But in another aspect, we're also missing something. So let's use the story, having the consciousness that we are documenting it, we are saying it, we are using it in whichever way we can, not just for us, but for other people too, who can benefit from that. So thank you so much for that, Dr. Mansia. Now, I don't know if you want to say anything in particular related to us as a community in the diaspora. What are the strategies for us to actually use storytelling for our preservation? Please speak to that.
As I look at it, I feel that as it relates to the foundation, let me say it like that. As we speak to the foundation of preserving ourselves through our stories, I remember as I grew up through my high school years and I did literature because I loved the literature and language, and that was one of the subjects that I chose and love until this day. I love writing, and I love how people pour themselves into changing, using writing as a medium to change, which is really was a powerful tool in our African diaspora, where we shared our stories in oral traditions. We shared it in our songs of survival and the messages that we send to survive and so on. And I looked at what came to mind that are still memorable to this day as I dig into how I want to answer this question. I look at the story of Anansi. In our culture, the story of Anansi is really important for us because it is being the Anansi stories were passed down through my generation as stories that make me laugh even now as I tell you, but they were all about teaching wisdom and wit and resilience because the stories emphasize the importance of using what you have, your power and your intelligence and your authority in a way that adds value to yourself and your others and help you to overcome your challenges. I don't know, you might not be familiar with I remember the founder of the Mali Empire and the themes that came out about destiny. It's an epic tale and it inspired me at all times about how the power of determination and taking decisive action that based from a place of deep understanding, of understanding where you fit in the narrative. And I look at the Ethiopian folktale that teaches patience. I think it was a story of a woman who needed to gain a lion's trust, but she had to, because she wanted to receive what is called a whisker. And she, the way in which she was patient and endured and sought to understand the mindset of this lion so she knew when to act and how to act. What are those things saying to me? If I look at some powerful quotes that have stuck with me through my lifetime from books like written by Chinua Achebe, who is one of my favorite authors right there. He says also, I think it says, until the lion, uh, until the lion have their historians, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. A lot of people don't understand that, but it is emphasizing the importance of telling your story to preserve your identity and to present what is your truth. Nelson Mandela says it is not our diversity which divides us. It is not our ethnicity or our religion or our culture that divides us. It is us. It is us, those who want to tell our stories or want to have other people telling our stories for us. And we must unite and proudly tell our story. Maya Angelou is one of them that says the greatest agony that is the hardest to bear is a story that is untold, that is inside of you. And so we need to understand that our stories heal us and that they empower us and they give us answers. When we put our stories out in the open, even if we write them down, anything we write down, we have this vision that the Bible says we have written, and it becomes plainer to us. So what am I saying? What am I saying? I am saying that we must share genuine stories that reflect our experiences and our emotions. And we must, as we share these stories, be authentic enough to manage ourselves and to manage our emotions so that we do it from a place of logical reasoning and we do it with intention and purpose. That is a message I want us to remember. We must honor our heritage, so we must respect and accurately represent our cultural traditions and the historical facts that as we know it, because so many of us are too ashamed of where we are coming from. And if where we are coming from is the foundation of who we really are, you cannot truly connect with self and others. You cannot truly heal yourself. You cannot truly heal others if you are not healing yourself. What you give would not be something that is genuine, it would be something that is fake. And we want, one of the ways to do that is to honor our heritage. We may not have accepted it, we may see flaws in it, and we may know because of our enlightenment that is coming from that place, see ways in which it can be altered and changed, and maybe make the effort to go back and make the changes. But we must acknowledge and accept where our roots and how that has given us wings. We must also encourage participation. We must include this discussion in diverse spaces, in inclusive ways where everyone feels valued and respected and can trust each other and feel comfortable sharing their stories, because your stories can be stories of fear, of discovery, of wanting to understand, wanting to feel, wanting clarity, wanting closure. And so, as you share your stories, we must have those spaces. Just as Jenny says, and it's a powerful story, Jenny. I really think it's a powerful story. And that is where I am. I am passionate about helping introverted female leaders who have these types of pain and so on, these struggles, these being feeling stuck or confused as to what is the next step. I have gone through it, Janine, just like you, and I have committed myself to help persons, introverted persons who hide a lot of pain and who struggle with having someone to share with that they can trust and feel confidential to make the moves, and having the patience and the understanding. I am right there, and that is what I do. I believe that we must have those types of diverse medium also, or be where we employ various forms of storytelling so that persons who are comfortable speaking orally can, those who are comfortable writing can, those who want to see it visually, who want to do their movies and so on can, who want to create a podcast can. We who become masters, we who have experience and whatever we have overcome, must empower those who come behind us. Each one must reach one. So the part of telling the story, the part of self-reservation, and the collective well-being of each other can be preserved. It's no longer time for us to be very particular or be very selfish when we have gifts and talents and experiences that can help others to overcome. We must embrace our purpose through our stories, and we must leave this world a better place. And the thing that is so important that we are doing here and we have done in crafting the importance of storytelling to business people and so on, we have actually created a course And that course, OBA will put the link in the chat, where persons who are in business can see how their stories can push their business, can expand their productivity, their organizational success, can make contribute to loyalty, and can also make them remain relevant and viable. How you tell your story as a business person, how you started, can make your brand become effective enough, authentic enough, and trustworthy enough, because your story, your greatest ministry, usually comes from your greatest pain. And so, as we use mediums like these in OBE to educate and inspire, it is really to uplift and build a community of practice where we help people to foster a sense of pride and continuity and confidence in telling these parts of their stories that are relevant for embodying change, transformation, and changing outcomes. We don't want to avoid we want to avoid stereotypes where we steer clear of persons who place we share our story with, and who we give power and authority over stories to amplify them and to put them out, because sometimes they are they reinforce how they transform our story, how they put it together to sell it, creates disparity, and reinforces the negative stereotypes that some persons put on certain nations and race, and oversimplify some of the portrayals of the African culture and their experience, and also can become also condescending. And so we must avoid that, and we must not share personal stories without permission. If somebody has spoken to us, and we are in that business of sharing and of highlighting, we must be very guarded and very careful to ask permission, and be very sensitive to, when we get the permission, of how these topics must be related to preserve the dignity of persons. Not everybody is strong. Some persons are very vulnerable, and their vulnerability is shared because they felt so overwhelmed or helpless, and sometimes feel hopeless, and they share. And you are in a position where you can magnify their story to change their lives and transform them, but you must become a guardian angel that guards their dignity, and then you must help them to carry on with grace. You must also ensure that the space, the storytelling space, is, what would that, managed, managed, and structured and organized by the originators, the persons of the African diaspora, and that their stories are not co opted or misrepresented by outsiders. I have stressed that because it has happened too many times. In fact, Obi, our stories that would make the change are being taken from many shelves and being subdued in many libraries because they feel that it has power to promote a certain awareness that can lead to habits or actions that can become volatile. And I'm saying that is the power of self-preservation and your story. You must also, while it is important to highlight our struggles and our situations and our issues and our circumstances in our story, we must make sure that we balance the story. And that's why I say we must look at the bad parts. We must highlight the bad parts in a good way. Because, first of all, we must see if we are overcoming, because we have overcome, we are standing here. We are here because what happened to us did not kill us. We are still here. So, what do I carry from that experience? Because experience must teach us wisdom. It must make us wiser. It must make us more aware. It must make us stronger. And it must carry us over. And it must carry us over anything that is an obstacle or a hindrance. And so our stories must be told from a position of triumph and resilience and hope. It must not be told from a point of victimization. We must stop turning ourselves into victims because we have a terrible experience or a terrible betrayal or a terrible story or an unexpected crisis, or the things that happen to us are so incredible that nobody else's story matter. We have to be careful and guard against this type of pessimism and self-aggrandizement of victim of us wanting to have a badge because we are victims. Our stories are delicately and divinely placed in our hands to serve a much greater purpose than to make us helpless and hopeless. And so if you are still here, God designed it for you to do something purposeful, and your story, when it is told, must leave the persons who hear it better off. And I thank you, Janine, again for how you brought that to a culmination of victory and of strength. Because so many persons in your circumstance would have given up and would have taken upon themselves a unholy dependence that they would have brought along and given and signed that contract for their generations to feel helpless and hopeless. Leaders must understand their position in their families and understand the place that their story have in relation to how you carry your family along. Because if you're a victor, your members of your family are usually victors. If you have this victim mentality, members of your family normally tend to become victims because they know their resilience is not supported by their environment, by the words that are poured over them, by the actions and the habits and the routines that are exercised in our homes. And we must also ensure that our stories maintain the integrity of being truthful. We are not to distort them for sensationalism, and we are not to distort them for manipulation. We must tell the story, and the story must carry us to the places that we need to go so that we can remain ethically sound enough for God to continue to use us effectively to preserve ourselves, to promote our resilience, to strengthen our community bonds and connections. Thank you, Obehi, for that, for giving me that opportunity.
It's so much for that. Thank you. I appreciate that, Dr. Matsia. It's always full of value here. What you're sharing, we appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Yeah, I don't think I really have anything to add there because it's really full of value, and I think we also understand the point, the central point, that it is not just about us. I really want to hammer on that. That by telling story, also like Dr. Matsia have pointed out, we are actually like all the elements are in the dark. Now you have a torchlight that you are going to point. You point it to any direction that you want. That's highlighting it. You are giving the people that are watching you, listening to you, in the case of maybe a storyteller now, you are telling them this is what you need to pay attention to. That is one of the most beautiful part of doing documentary. I've done a couple of documentaries here. That all the information are there, all the elements are there in front of you, but you don't want to show the people all the elements. Let me explain what I mean. I did a documentary about Pan-Africanism, testing I did on reality. That was in 2015. I did documentary. Of course, I did a lot of interview with people. One person during the interview can last for about 1 hour or 1 hour 30 minutes, depending on how the conversation went. And I did several interviews like this to do the documentary itself. And the documentary lasts for, I think, 53 minutes. That is the whole of it, which means I need to watch 1 hour interview and take out the piece that I want. Not that every other thing that was said there was stupid, but I am creating a story. I have an objective. That is a message I want to cut across. Therefore, I am taking all these different pieces together and I'm putting it into a narrative because that is a message I want to cut across. And of course, in the case of that documentary, it was pretty simple in that how do we measure up what is happening to Africa today in reality, place it side by side with the beautiful idea of Pan-Africanism. That is the idea, of course. For me to express that, I needed different interview of people who share their opinion. So that as a storyteller now, you are actually deciding to reveal the part that you want to reveal for people. Consider that part that you are revealing from as your story. You see, if you were to tell your story, I think Jenny said it also, that it would become like an encyclopedia. Actually, I want to even exaggerate on that. Not only exaggeration, it will be bigger than a encyclopedia. Nobody can hold up that book. Because to talk of your experience in one day, there is a lot of things that happen. Because when you take up a concept, you take up an idea, you need to build a concept around that idea. What are you talking about? Within what? In relation to what? By the time you finish to explain your experience in one day, you're already getting more than 250 pages of a book. I'm not exaggerating, which is to say that if you were to talk about your life experience in a book, nobody can actually lift that book off the ground. But you don't want to do that. Nobody wants to read that kind of book. So what do? You do what Dr. Marcial is telling you here, which is pick the part that reflects what you want to communicate. Who is in front of you? Who do you want to talk to? What is your message? How is this message uplifting you or solving the situation? You cannot just throw out everything there and maybe tell the people, hey, figure it out. That is not going to work. It's not going to work. You are going to figure it out yourself and share with the people. For there is a part of the people, a part of the audience that are also going to reflect, yes, but you are going to come up with a cohesive message. What do you want people to remember of you when you are no longer here? And guess what? That is your story to write. Nobody is coming to write that story for you. Nobody is coming to frame that part for you. In the signature program that we are designing just now, that is at the centerpiece of it, is that looking at everything that is happening to you today, what do you want this to mean? That meaning is up to you to define. Of course, there are different lessons there that they are going to be available for you. There are going to be a cheat sheet and all of it that you can use. There are books that are going to be available for you as part of the package. But all these are just instruments. The really thing that is happening is you. What do you want? Like, what do you really want? You're going to be the one to decide that. Because in your 90 years, like I'm saying now, I will probably not be there. So it is not about me. It's about you in reference to your reality. So you're not going to throw out everything that have happened to you just for the people to see. Because there are also some private events. There are some events that happen to you that this one is just for you to learn. It's not for you to share. You cannot share everything. You need to be mature, therefore, to understand what is a context. So I think storytelling can actually be used to preserve ourselves and to uplift our image, who we are. Like I was saying before, like that torch light, you take it and light a certain part of your life, the one that you want to light. That is what you want to share with the world. It doesn't mean it's a lie just because you are not saying everything. It means that is what you are giving evidence. That is what you want to highlight. That puts you in a power position. You see, you could talk about how you have been victimized, which can be also a story. But is that really what you want to talk about? It's up to you. There is no wrong or right way to do it. Remember what I was saying before? I'm a writer. I knew the story that was going to be told by a girl who I was going to be translating for. Yet, when she tells the story, tears is coming down on my face. What is happening there? It is not about wrong or right. It's about what do you want to project. Because if it is about wrong or right, nobody will go to the cinema. You will never read a fiction, because fiction basically means lie, meaning it didn't happen, but you imagine it. Just because it didn't happen doesn't mean it's a bad thing, okay? You know, this is what I'm saying now, because when you say something, you need to give a context around what you have said. Otherwise, people can misunderstand you. Like, I just said it's a lie. Oh, that means it need to be condemned. Now, no, it depends on in what context are we talking about. You must be able to stir up the emotion of the people. That is why it works. You see, it has been working for thousands of years. One writer said that about 30,000 years ago, when our ancestors were able to sit down around a campfire, something actually happened. That is the origin of storytelling. That is how he put it. That because of that, our brain actually developed differently, because we are stimulating certain part of our brain to respond. So this is actually an ancient form of communication. Therefore, it is up to us to learn how to use it. But if you learn how to use it, you don't have any limitation. But if you don't, you will always be in a competition, because what are you going to do? You are a coach. Do you know how many coaches are out there? What are you coaching? You are coaching people about branding, about what? Are you selling a product? You want to sell books? Do you know how many books are out there? But do you know that all the 8 billion people in the world put together, if you know your story, you will still be individual. You will still be a person. You will still be outstanding. You will still be remarkable. Nobody can ever mistake you among the 8 billion people in the world. Storytelling is magical in this sense. So we must learn to leverage it and learn to use it to preserve ourselves. It is an instrument that is not going to do anything for us in itself, but if we use it, it can work for us. All right, Dr. Martin, I want to thank you again. Of course, we have spent the time. What is going to be your final take here today to conclude? Please go.
I want to say that in closing, we are to examine ourselves and to see what are the ways that our stories can contribute and continue to build us and preserve our peace of mind or dignity. And also, we want to look at our stories. What is the purpose in the pains that are in our stories? And what struggles came out and how it has strengthened us. What I'm really saying, we must evaluate and examine our experiences and ourselves, and we must really reflect on what we are carrying as a result of our stories, because it's not what we go through, it's what we carry out. And so we must now start to focus on what we carry out. And in the process, too, we must support others and promote the self preservation and collective well being of those in our circle and in our environments and in our families. Because even though they are part of our families, their story is unique and is different, because every story is a part of a bigger narrative. That's how I started, and that is how I want to end. And as we foster that type of stability, and as we provide that type of security and that space, we must continue at the educational and inspirational level to conduct the workshops that will help people to tell their stories more confidently. We must help them to focus on the technique so they amplify the parts of their stories that must be amplified, and they share the parts that are to be shared on a one-on-one, and they share those parts that must be given on a broader scale, so that their narratives do not become trivial, but they are meaningful connections for persons' lives, to change lives and to change outcomes. We want to also mentor persons who have experienced life in a very different way than ours, and who have not come out of it with enough courage and strength to move forward immediately. No, are feeling stuck. We must be, as experienced storytellers and livers, to guide these people, especially young people, in sharing their true stories, how they are feeling, and how they now represent themselves so that they can be holistic enough to tell their stories unapologetically. We want to organize stories, festivals, and I want to highlight Dr. Ava Brown, who has taken that dream of telling stories, turned it into a movie, and has captured a large portion of the Jamaican audience in sharing their stories, culminating very soon in what is called a movie festival and a film festival that we have not seen the likes of. I know that sometimes we cannot move to those magnitudes, but we must ensure that person's stories become accessible to future generation as much as we make our stories accessible. And if we cannot go out further than our generation, that is enough because each generation carries that legacy and carries that message, carries that hope, carries that strength, carries that resilience, and carries that success when we organize our stories and use it to empower us and not hinder us. Thank you for giving me the opportunity of sharing. If there are persons who feel that their story needs some, you need a mindset, you need to have some perspective on your story, you need to have an accountability partner, you know how to tell a story, but you're still struggling with certain types of hurt as you reflect on your story. You want to really reconnect with yourself and you really want to pivot so you can begin to strive on purpose with purpose. You can don't hesitate to give me a call or to book your appointment to see where this will take us because that is what I do. Thank you, B, for always having these rooms and for inviting me. And I also want to thank Gloria and to wish that she gets well very soon. I know she did an operation recently, and so she's recuperating. We wish her all the best and God's healing and blessings on her.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, she's getting better. We are very, very happy about that. Thank you so much also, Dr. Marcia, for your contribution here. They are highly valuable. Thank you. And of course, like Dr. Marcia has said, we have co-created a course that is titled How to Own Your Voice as an African Diaspora Through Storytelling. And that course is available on Aclasses. Or you can send me or send Dr. Marcia a DM who will send you the link so that you can get the copy of that course. It's available for us to learn from because probably you need some tip to be able to leverage the power of storytelling in what you are doing as an African diaspora. So that is what we created our course for. There were different people that make their contribution in the course because we believe in the power of co-creation, that no one knows it or have all the solution, but by working together, we're able to do a lot of things and make bigger impact. So that course is available. And if you have not read any of the 5-part book series from where this audio room is coming from, that also is available on Aclasses media. Just type aclasses.org/free chapter. Then you should have it. You are not paying anything for it. It is free. But what maybe, for example, you want to learn how to stand out in what you are doing or have a deeper sense of yourself, either as a business, as an entrepreneur, or as an individual, then you can send me a message because that is essentially what I do. I help professionals and entrepreneurs to stand out, owning their story so they can attract the right audience. So I want to thank you all again for being here. Every 14 days we are here. So we are looking forward to see you in 14 days time because we are really intentional about this. We believe this is our call and we are responding to it. And please do respond also to your own call. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.